Yes, I mean, there's so many problems in the world, but I'm an optimist, and I think that optimism is the only way forward. And so that's why we call this mission possible. And it's possible, and if we really want it, it is easy to change the world. The technology is there to change the world. There's enough people that want another world, so we can just build it. Okay. In 2015, the world has set 17 Sustainable Development Goals in very different domains: poverty, planetary integrity, human well-being, reducing inequalities. And these are focused on all the problems that we face in every country in the world. And well, we agreed as the United Nations, as 193 countries, we agreed that we will meet these goals before 2030. That is 10 years from now. We are behind schedule. And I don't remember when it exactly was, but at one point, Anya and Sarat Davala from Basic Income Network India, and Lena Stark from Basic Income Sweden, all of a sudden it clicked. Basic income contributes to the majority of the Sustainable Development Goals. And so we decided to spread that word within the basic income movement, because we never really talked about Sustainable Development Goals, really, did we? And we decided to found a foundation which is called Mission Possible 2030. And that's what we did, and you can have a look at the website. We just started it this year, somewhere in the beginning of this year. And that is our mission now, to connect basic income to all the different domains that the Sustainable Development Goals are targeting. So let's first talk about basic income. I think many of you are familiar with the topic, but basic income is sometimes used for something that it is not. If you give a basic income to people that are unemployed, then it's not unconditional. So it's really important to really define what a basic income is. And there are a couple of very important characteristics. So can you name one? What is a basic income?
It's unconditional.
It is unconditional. Everyone gets it. No questions asked. Something else?
What age?
Sorry?
At what age do you think?
Well, my opinion is everyone gets it, including babies. But there's a discussion within the basic income movement that some people think you should be 18. But for example, in Alaska, where they already have a sort of like basic income, a yearly basic income, they give it to infants as well. So these are the important characteristics. It has to be periodic. So normally people say it should be every month. Why? Because then if you take a risk, if you start your own business, something goes wrong, the next month you will have enough money to survive. It has to be cash or digital money, whatever, but it has to be money, because then you have the freedom to choose what you spend it on. If you give food, then food is the only thing you get. If you decide not to eat today and spend it on a haircut, that's your choice. So it has to be cash. So that then you have the freedom of choice. It has to be individual. Every individual gets it. You as a spouse are not dependent on your other half to have enough money to meet your basic needs. So it's very important that it's individually paid. It needs to be high enough to meet your basic needs. It's your right to have access to your basic needs. So if you give a basic income, it should be high enough, at least as high as the poverty line. And the poverty line is defined in an amount of money. And that is, of course, different depending on in which area you live. Well, unconditional, no means testing, no questions asked, rich and poor, get a basic income. Good guys, bad guys, everybody gets a basic income. And you don't have to work. So what a basic income does is it disconnects work from income. You can work, you're allowed to work, and if you work, you can choose to work and earn an additional income, but you can also do voluntary work or do nothing. But you always have enough income to buy your food, to buy your clothes, to buy your water, and to get a roof over your head. That's the most important thing. And then if you look at the definition of a basic income, because of what it is, it already contributes to 4 of the 70 Sustainable Development Goals. It doesn't reduce poverty, it eradicates poverty instantly, because you give it to everyone on a regular basis. It is high enough to meet your basic needs. So immediately poverty is gone. It reduces hunger. Of course, it depends on where you live. If you live in the desert, then you can have your money, but if there's no tomatoes in the desert, but the basic income will give you the ability to move to another area. And I think one of the most powerful experiments with pilots or tryouts with a basic income with regards to hunger was in Namibia. I think it was in 2014. They had a period of extreme drought, and then the government asked everyone to help, because the whole country was in despair because of lack of food. And then the Lutheran Church found some funding, and they gave cash to the people in 4 villages. And then you saw the impact of when you give people cash. There was one problem: there was no food. But some bought food for themselves because they were hungry. Others bought food for their cattle. Others bought seeds to grow crops for the next season. And some other people rented a donkey to plough the land. People know what to do when they are in trouble. The only thing they need is to have access to whatever they need. And they can choose themselves. And you probably have heard of Give Directly, which is like an NGO in the States. They give cash to people, mostly in Kenya, but in more countries in Africa. And people transform their lives, and it depends on what they need. I mean, sometimes they repair the roof, sometimes they go and see the doctor, they send their children to school, domestic violence reduces, everything can happen when you give people access to money. Because it is individually paid, it reduces gender inequality. In many countries, the women are dependent on the income and the man to get access to their money. So because it is individually paid, it reduces gender inequality. And inequality in general, of course. But there is more. We already know from all kinds of experiments with basic income or cash transfer pilots and programs that a basic income has effects on so many different domains. We already talked about poverty and hunger, but people become healthier. In low-income countries, people finally have access to go and see the doctor, so health expenses go up. In Western countries, health expenses go down because people are less stressed. There are less burnouts, psychological problems reduce. So in all countries, people become healthier when they have access to their basic needs, when they have access to money. And when they have the choice to continue what they're doing or to actually really change their lives. If you're in a job that you don't like, or if your employer is not treating you well, with a basic income you can say, okay, I can maybe continue to work for you, but you have to treat me better, and if you don't, I will change. I will change my direction. So it empowers people. Education, in India we saw that children stay in school longer, especially girls. The teenage girls are taken out of school because they have to take care of their siblings. So the girls stay in school longer, but even adults. I mean, we're living in a phase in society where the technological innovations are going, the changes so rapidly that we need other skills. If I'm in my 50s and I want to learn new skills with a basic income, I can teach myself, I can have access to education. So both children and adults have access to learn new skills, and the skills that I want to learn, and not something that governments tell you to learn. And if you want to learn, the only way to learn things is if you're intrinsically motivated. Well, gender inequality we already talked about. If you look at the website of Give Directly, you see many stories about how men and women in their own households negotiate more when they both have a basic income. They negotiate about how to spend their money, and there's less violence, domestic violence. Clean water and sanitation, it's not so much an issue in countries that we live in, but in countries like India, people organize themselves and improve the sanitation, the facilities. Then work and economic growth. Well, people, if you ask people what would you do with a basic income, no one says, well, I would stop working and, sit in front of the telly all day. And if you look at the evidence, people work more. They choose other things. They choose other things. They get out of their bullshit job, or they get out of their slavery position, but they actually become more active. And if you look at the data, you see that people start their own businesses, and if you evaluate their economic position a few years after basic income, they have more money than you gave them. So they increase their income and their assets. And yes, they choose different things, and yeah, and maybe that's okay. Reduce inequalities, we already talked about. Life on land. In Namibia we saw a decrease in crime rates, 30%, with a huge decrease in illegal hunting. So even life on land can, benefit from a basic income. And of course peace. I mean, most crimes are poverty related. Most crimes are poverty related. No one wants to steal from another person. Well, maybe one or two will continue to do that. But most crimes are poverty related. And then partnership of the goals, well, basic income in itself is, as you can see, contributing to every goal, or the majority of the goals. But what we see is that communities where people get a basic income, people start collaborating. I call it the wheel of fortune. So people make groups, and then they say, okay, this month everybody gives a certain amount to you. You get something extra. You invest in a sewing machine, or you can buy a goat or whatever. And then the next month you will get a bit of extra, and then the next month you can get a bit of extra. That happens in a natural way. So people start collaborating, they start discussing amongst each other, what can we do? All of a sudden we can do anything we want. How shall we do this? How shall we change our position? So human well-being, no doubt, is improving with a basic income. Inequalities will reduce with a basic income. So the only thing we have to look at, really, so what will it do with planetary integrity? Because it was not evaluated. There's no real experiments that look at plastic waste or sustainability, ecological factors. And that is a problem. Is anyone familiar with Cape Walworth, the donut economy?
No.
You are?
Lying on beside my bed these days.
So, yes. Yes, I mean it's
Almost
nothing
finished.
new, but she's basically said it in, well, I can recommend to read that book. It is basically about, you know, the inner circle is a social foundation. So if you have lack of access to basic needs, well, you're in trouble. But there's also an overshooting. There's also a limit to what we can do to our planet. And if you continue to do it like this, well, I mean, we all know Extinction Rebellion, maybe you've heard of you know, ecocide, stop ecocide, change the law. There is something really wrong in our society, and we all know it. And somehow it doesn't change yet, but it will. So she says, basically, there is a poverty line, so you need to lift everybody up above the poverty line. But then, if you are up above the poverty line, there is also a ceiling. And what we have seen now is, we call that, well, I call that a plunder of the commons. I don't know, well, you probably all know, have known about Guy Standing. I don't know if you are familiar with his new book. He's now written about the commons. So we are killing our planet. In that book, he also suggests a few ways to let to share public wealth. So if multinationals get rich from plundering our planet, then it's payback time now. Yeah. So there is a lot of money going on there. So let's bring it back to the people through a basic income. So lift everyone up above the poverty line, and we'll have a better world. So basically, what Kate Raworth, she's not. Well, she is in favour of basic income, but in her Donut Economy book, I think she mentions basic income in like a few lines. I think her next version will be a whole chapter about basic income, because if you look at her social foundation thing, then you see everything that's in there is influenced by the basic income. Water, food, health, education, income and work, peace and justice, political voice, social equity, gender equality, housing, networks, energy, everything is influenced by basic income. So then we have to look in the mirror. What are humans like? Are we going to have more of this when everyone has enough money to survive? Or are we going to see more of this? Are we going to clean up our planet? Are we going to save the animals? These are examples that are already there. And these people planting trees are not the richest ones. So if you take them out of the survival mode, they might do that more. Or will we have more of this? I mean, yes, of course, some people will, you know, go painting, but there will also be people trying to invent these kind of drones that have that shoot trees in remote areas. It's like, I mean, it is not difficult to reforest the planet. It is not difficult. The technology is there. So I think that, you know, what a basic income does is it gets people out of the survival mode, and then we wake up. And when I receive a basic income, I become conscious. And when I'm conscious, I am connected. And when I am connected, I will take care of my surroundings. You cannot ask a poor person who is surviving and has no food to take care of the planet. That is not feasible. So you have to take the people out of the poverty, out of the slavery, and then we will take care of our planet. Most of you will probably know the book that's behind you, I think, from Rutger Bregman, Utopia for Realists. His new book is still only in Dutch, because it came out in September, but it's the 5th edition already. This will be translated in 32 languages as well, just as that book. It is 500 pages thick, with evidence that most people are okay. We are not to blame. Most people are okay. It is a fantastic book with stories full of evidence. He uses evidence from psychology, economy, biology, archaeology. It is full of evidence that most people are okay. It is a lie that we cannot take care of our surroundings. It's a lie. So watch out for this when it's when it's translated. It is recommended. It is a new. If you think about the impact of when we really believe that we are okay, everything will change. We will not have to control you. Are you sick enough to be able to get, to receive a welfare? Are you doing enough to get a job? We don't need to control each other. We can just collaborate, and we do that by nature. So, if we are taken out of poverty, we can rebuild the commons. We will rebuild the commons, and it's easy. It is easy. We will share, because that's what our nature is. And yeah, I mean, you can look at my TEDx where I explain how technology can help to do that. But you don't even need technology. If you think that profit is not your goal and you're an entrepreneur, then you don't have to be afraid that you won't have enough access to money. Money is nothing. You cannot eat money. There's so much passive money. We don't even use the money that's available because we're sitting on it, because we're afraid of losing it. And when everyone, when everyone gets a basic income, then you will never have to be afraid of not having enough, because every month you will have enough to eat. So a basic income is of course not the only thing that we need, but what it will trigger is new governance models. We will build our own communities. So if we have a social foundation, we will sit together and think, with our neighbours and the people around us, look, there's plastics everywhere. We have to get rid of it. Yeah, go on, let's take the Saturday off and just, clean it all up. We will do that. And we will need more open and inclusive multi-stakeholder governance models. I mean, the central governments have proven that they're not taking care of us. So we have to build something else. And if we have a blanket of community-based new models, then we're there. It is as easy as that. Just form a group and just do what you think is good. Well, and then we will be happy and partying. We'll all be happy and partying. And the main message is, it is possible and it is not difficult. So, regarding a basic income, I mean, central governments, yes, they will follow eventually, but only if we organize pilots in local communities. There is I think he's 28 years old mayor in Stockton in the United States. He gives people a basic income now. There are villages in Kenya where they have to convince each other that, and if 80% of the villages agree that they will receive a basic income, then they get it. And all those small communities will show the world that it transforms humanity, and then there is no politician that will actually prevent you from receiving it. But we need to try and build communities that actually get it, so we can show the decision makers that there's no other way. And I think that will happen. I think that will happen, don't you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's where we are. Yeah.
Yes. There's no way back. There's no way back.
No, it has
Okay. Yeah, that was my message.
been- Yeah. Thank you.